So I'm going to start with some photos and history that can give context and perspective to the opposition of the rezoning request of the South Meadows property. I'll continue with information on why this history and community vision applies to the general plan and the Southwest Area Master Plan, including some other plans that were adopted by the city. And when Colpack was seeking applications for consideration of open space to purchase and designated, residents in our neighborhood applied. And this property came in second as worthy of preserving to the property surrounding and behind the 400-year-old church of Meadows. And so this property has reached an incredibly high standard of criteria in its dedication as open space. So the County Communications Coordinator, Carmelina Hart, states that the sale of open space is exceedingly rare and the South Meadows location is the only one she is aware of. This property was not actively for sale and the applicant does not own it. The applicant solicited the county outside of public view with what appears to be little regards to its extensive history, public and government financial investment, or of the importance to the health of our community as a whole. We believe that because of this solicitation, the county made a hasty decision without public input and did not do due diligence to gather any up-to-date information on its importance to District 3 or to the community as a whole. So what are we going to do? The Tempos Lindos HOA and the neighborhood residents are committed to staying involved. We are going to facilitate city and county relationships to solve responsibilities of ownership and maintenance, which has become muddled by the poorly executed annexation. And we will help secure funding and continue community involvement. So how are we going to accomplish these commitments? Well, I think I've proven my commitment to organizing community engagement, and there are some other opportunities as well. Now, this is paraphrased, and it's from the 2018 City of Santa Fe Open Space Park and Trails Plan. It states that county staff has expressed interest in coordinating trail signage efforts as well as discussing maintenance partnerships with the city staff where county has adjacent open spaces or spaces existing within city limits. And in early conversations that we had with the city and county, we believe that they are willing to both have open discussions if the sale is not finalized. In Chapter 14, Number 4, resubmitting of rezoning application states, and this is paraphrased, once rezoning application has been denied by the governing body, a similar rezoning application for the same property shall not be filed within 12 months. And this gives our community plenty of time to facilitate all of those relationships. So, public funding. How do we follow through with this commitment? Well, we are already in conversation with the Santa Fe Land Conservation for possible support of maintenance, and Trust for Public Lands for improvements for greater community access and adding elements that support children's physical and mental development. These organizations have an excellent reputation in successful and reliable work with the city and the county. Now, in preliminary discussion with the staff of Parks and Recs Department, the open space plan will take the same amount of employees and maintenance as the neighborhood park that is proposed by the applicant. Supporting young families' needs. Now, this is where it gets really exciting for us as a community. The open space management plan is a thoughtful, well-executed management plan, and it focuses heavily on environmental, arts, and culture educational use for the 5 public schools within walking distance. And in fact, 120 students were involved in this plan that included an outdoor classroom. And they used GPS and GIS mapping software and collected scientific data about the habitat, also learning about conservation and stewardship. In-field education is physically and mentally engaging, and it brings context to complex discussions about conservation, watershed evaluations, sustainable landscape architecture, city planning, quality of life issues, and it introduces real-world mathematics, engineering, and community development. And our community wants the chance to revitalize this use. This educational use is also a relief from COVID pressures that schools are now facing. The state is already investing time in finding grants for outdoor classrooms. The quality of education can only be accomplished in an open space setting with an intact high desert ecosystem. Decreasing its size to anything less than 22 acres threatens this educational resource. So let's talk about playtime. Unstructured play benefits every child in the entire community, and it's not dependent on expensive personal equipment or being good at any particular structured game. And in fact, the National Parks Division states, structured outdoor play such as organized sports or games keeps kids active and boosts physical health. However, unstructured outdoor play is even more important. Socially, children can learn flexibility, cooperation, and self-awareness from unstructured play. Emotionally, unstructured play can increase happiness and decrease stress and aggression. An open space naturally promotes unstructured play, but we want to take it a bit further and introduce nature play, which is a progressive design of play structure and interactive nature-based games that supports unstructured play. It utilizes sustainable features including water conservation, drought-tolerant native plants, sustainable stormwater management. It incorporates reclaimed logs and salvaged repurposed concrete, and it is wildly popular with children and adults alike in communities that are already using it. We think it's a beautiful idea to offer a node within the open space community park while complementing the overwhelming community desire to preserve the intact ecosystem and high desert habitat as open space. Nature play also keeps maintenance costs low, and interestingly enough, it has a much lower injury rate than traditional equipment. This would be unique to Santa Fe, supporting the original intention of an open space community park, not just a neighborhood park. And this is where size matters. 22 acres offers what landscape designers call an immersive experience. And it's that immersive experience that also provides adults with relief from stress and anxiety. It promotes moments of contemplation and introspection, and it promotes a good walk and deep breathing. And as our resident Albert McGetty says, it is just good medicine. So speaking of community parks and what they provide as a health service to our community, I will turn this over to Rachel, who has a degree in city planning and community development, to start touching on details about public health and how it promotes or how it applies to the general plan.
I want to talk right now about the general plan and in particular the concepts of infill and density, the infill being a principal tool for adding housing in the general plan. and also one that the applicant today has relied on very heavily to justify the location of the housing they're proposing. And what I want to, the point I want to make overall is this is not a location where there should be any more housing, whether it's affordable housing or some other kind of housing. It is a location where the promises of the general plan have basically come true, and it's time to call it a day. It's time to look long-term at the needs of these communities rather than short-term, which unfortunately is the only kind of dent that affordable housing, more housing, could make in this neighborhood. Long-term, it will have the ability to serve thousands of people and complement other park and open areas around the city. And I'm going to talk about this as a community park. This proposal really doesn't fit the definition of infill, which is the development of new housing or other buildings on scattered vacant lots in a built-up area, or new building parcels created by permitted lot splits on specifically identified infill sites, which this is not. This is about as far from a specifically identified site as it gets. Infill is also good for smaller subdivided lots that make effective use of existing infrastructure and a small portion of the new dwellings that were planned for the city over the 20-year period. 6% anywhere in the city. There's nothing special about the South Meadows site. Again, this was not specifically identified for infill. It was owned by the county, where it was planned to be open space with a modest upgrade. In the swamp plan in 2015, published or adopted in 2017, it was again designated as a community center and a park. It was never identified by the county or the city as a potential infill site in any plan following annexation. This was not a previously developed or a smaller subdivided lot, and it's car dependent. It's totally not transit oriented. There are Zillow walk scores, which range from 0 to 100, and these homes would come in the 20 to 30 range. So there will be significant added traffic and lots of cars going in and out on South Meadows Road. Now we're going to look at some current census figures, which also suggest that this community area has reached an appropriate level of density and it shouldn't be built any further. Right now, what I'm showing is the two census tracts which flank the project site, which is the green dot, 1205 to the left, and then 1204 to the right, which is now called 1206 and 1207. That is just starting with the 2020 census, because they like to split the areas into two when a census tract approaches 8,000 people, as this one has. So we will talk about it as 12.04, and as you see it here, it's numbered slightly differently. So this is from the 2015 to 2019 American Community Survey. I'll show you 2 pages of statistics. These 2 tracts are the most densely populated. Density we'll see is associated with crowding and large family sizes. So it has them on the largest average household sizes, 3.6 and 3.2, I believe. We'll be looking at those in a moment. They are among the 4 most populous tracts in the city, and they make up 15% of the total population of the city. Each one is about a square mile. Again, relative to other census tracts, and I'm not bringing in the Campanus tract yet, the largest number of mobile homes, largest number of children under 14. These are children who can't wander off by themselves and can't drive themselves to more distant locations. Single parent households, very, very high. And again, these are families that live with a tremendous amount of stress and demands, and a single car, and children who need to be involved in activities and so forth, but parents can't necessarily take them here and there when they're at work. And they are in the top 4 tracts for overcrowding. So I just want to point out that if you have number 3 and number 4 tracts for overcrowding, the answer is not to build more housing in the same location. The answer is to build more housing and hopefully affordable housing in a way that these neighborhoods can be de-densified. But you wouldn't go about that by building more houses in the same location, essentially filling in the only leftover significant amount of open space. In Chapter 1 of Growth Management, paragraph 1 gives the commission and the governing body the power that it needs to determine whether the timing and the location of proposed projects are appropriate, along, of course, with the character and the quality. But I want to say at this point again that from a timing perspective, this is past time. 20 years has passed. This neighborhood is dense. It is the most dense, and this is a really good time to stop and evaluate and balance the short-term needs with the future needs of this neighborhood. Now is the time to reserve green space, which will never be available again, and a way that will serve thousands, if not tens of thousands of people around the city in a way that 60 units of affordable housing can't possibly do. This map of the Southwest area master plan I'm showing because it's right on top of the project area. It's the 1204 census district, and then it pushes west to include the park areas and also the Templos Lindos subdivision. So the decisions that were made about this area are not necessarily referred to a great deal right now because the annexation happened along the way, and that left a lot of unfinished business. But it is smack dab on top of the area. And one of the things that gets said about neighborhood plans is that they required a huge commitment on the part of the people who live there, who have a lot of knowledge of the area that they live in and problem-solving ability. And this is where the park was designated to be a neighborhood center. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the amount of vacant land in the area. So when we're looking at the decision that needs to be made about this project, this proposed project, something that has to be kept in mind is that there is not going ever to be another opportunity to take land and make it into a community park. This is pretty much it. The amount of vacant land has dropped dramatically, and we'll be looking at the projects that have been approved. Still, yeah, there's a lot of building that's planned right now in this area. The rural residential disappeared, undeveloped and vacant diminished by 63%, and most of that has come up has been low density residential. Here we look at the construction that was underway, approved as of last summer. And I tallied up 670 units that are really within the area that we're looking at here. And some of it is affordable, most of it is not. And one of the things that is a huge problem is that when developers pay into the fee in lieu fund, the Affordable Housing Fund, when those funds are matched, they still don't have a location to go with them. And that's what's going on in this proceeding. We have financial ability, but no location identified for affordable housing. So when there's inclusionary zoning and the developer chooses to build the unit, it will go on site, and we don't have this problem. And this is the difference from last summer up until now. And it's just absolutely stunning how much building is going on, and some of them quite substantially large projects. This doesn't show the third stage of Tierra Contenta, which will have somewhere maybe 450 to 480 affordable units. That's good. It also doesn't show the Camino de Jacobo project where the county, on land it owns a mile east of the site we're talking about today, will be building 100 to 200 deeply affordable rental units. Those are potential users of this park. They will add to the density of this area. Why else should this be a park? This should be a park because it's fair. The other districts have lots of parkland. This District 3 does not. In fact, if you were to add in the Swan Park and this 22-acre park, you would have about 100 acres. That starts to be fair when you look at the district, the other districts, and the amount of park land they have. So to say, for instance, well, we're getting Swan Park, well, yes, but it's also quite some distance from this one. And there are two very sort of, I would say, landlocked census tracts going up along Cerrillos that are even further away from Swan Park that will be able to take advantage of a South Meadows Community Park. And this shows how this park would fit in with all the other parks as a community park, not as a neighborhood park, not necessarily as, although some of these have been called regional parks, but a park that people would appreciate and come from different parts of the city to use. It fits right in terms of the acreage. And some of these parks have many amenities and game, playing fields, and just a lot of development. And South Meadows would not. It would be maybe more along the line of a Frenchie's Field. We should look at, though, what happens when you drop these 100 of the 160 units that are market rate into the middle of this neighborhood that we're looking at, where the owner-occupied homes, the value, the median is under $200,000. And the household incomes median, again, are in the 45 to 55 range. And we don't really know what that could mean because, of course, the median household price in the city right now is $607,000. So I just tossed out a number, 70%. Let's say they were all marked down 30%. That's not realistic, but some of them will be affordable. Majority of them won't. And I just really want to put out these questions. I don't have answers for them, but these are things that are worrisome. What's the effect going to be on the existing density? Of course, it's going to increase it. I don't know how it would decrease it. How many of the nearby households will have access to these new homes if they wanted to move up? Will the market rate homes drive taxes higher? Will they drive nearby rents higher? In which case, this thing about wanting to keep commuters from having to commute, and the sort of the environmental benefits of reducing commuter. I mean, if the result ends up being that a family leaves this neighborhood and has to commute and is replaced by a family with slightly more means and they don't need to commute, then we're just trading places. And meanwhile, we have more people from out of Santa Fe pouring in and paying cash for the more expensive houses here. So I think it's worth thinking about whether or not we're kind of going into some cycle when we do this. So is the effect on rents, effect on home values and taxes, and then ultimately, how is this going to help or affect the neighborhood diversity? Right now, looking at the rezoning, couple of the provisions. One, there's been a change in the surrounding area to justify changing the zoning. And we say absolutely not. There has been a change in the surrounding area, but it weighs heavily in favor of keeping the existing zoning. Now I'm going to refer to one of quite a number of health reports that have been written about this area. This one by the MPO and the public school system and the National Parks Service, and right from last spring. And it looks right at this area, a little bit larger, but right at this area. And they recognize that this area is very vulnerable. It was hit harder than any other neighborhood in the city by COVID. And part of that is that there is very little outdoor space for recreation. And there are both physical and psychological benefits to the outdoors. And this is something the Trust for Public Land has written several reports about. Equity in the recovery from COVID and park space is their thing, and they believe very strongly that we need to spend much more attention and money on parks. Again, rezoning, that a different category use is more advantageous. And we say that, no, it should be kept as it is, and rededicated as park, no longer neglected, but rededicated as a community park. If the lots are developed, it will have a short-term dip in the need for affordable housing, but it will be a long-term loss.
Setting aside all mishandled processes by the county betraying public trust, I'll get to the root of this conversation, which is nothing should be built on this property. The real impact of this development is the loss of 22 acres of open space that was planned and designed as a community park by the community. And it already has significant financial and time investments. With improvements to better access and a rejuvenation in the focus of educational setting for public schools, the South Meadows open space will start to thrive the way the community envisioned. With no plans from the city to purchase more parkland for District 3, this resource is just irreplaceable. No one here is arguing the need for affordable housing, but the need for affordable housing should not be used to justify bypassing all other concerns related to the general plan. And the 64 short-term affordable housing units that this project proposed is not sustainable and will need to be renewed in just a few short years. The open space will bring District 3 closer to social equality. It'll help balance public health needs, provide an educational resource, continue creating strong community bonds, and be a place of inspiration that brings a sense of place while serving literally thousands of residents for generations. And I would be honored to pick up the torch where my neighbors left off and see this vision come to life. I'm excited and I'm inspired to do so. Approval of rezoning and an amendment to the general plan from Park would be another massive betrayal of public trust. And to do so would be nothing short of tragic, reckless development. Thank you for your time this evening.